The 5th year of my secret crush on Sunayan, her family fell on hard times. It wasn't like they had nothing to live on, but her plan to study abroad and polish her credentials was completely derailed. When she finally worked up the nerve to ask me for money, awkward and hesitant, my mind was racing with schemes, and the words slipped out before I could stop myself. Money's no problem. But my family keeps a tight grip on the purse strings. Unless you have a baby with me, that way I can ask for the money with a clear conscience and… Unfortunately, before I could finish saying ask for money, Sunayan's Pegasus meteor fist landed square on my arm. I treat you like my brother, and you actually want me to have your baby… I stared at the message Sunayan had sent, my finger hovering over the keyboard for 3 whole minutes, unable to type so much as a single punctuation mark. Brother Chun, you free tomorrow? I'll buy you milk tea. I read that one short line at least 20 times, so many times I practically burned a hole through the screen with my stare. Sunayan asking me out? On her own initiative? Had the sun started rising in the west? Usually she'd just send me a location with a line that said, "Don't be a chicken, show up." 5 years. I'd been secretly in love with this carefree girl for 5 whole years, going from a fresh-faced kid to, well, a slightly less fresh-faced young man. My phone buzzed again, a new message popping up. Got something huge to talk to you about. My stomach dropped. Huge? Was she gonna announce she was in a relationship? Or was she planning to run off with that senior who'd been fawning over her this whole time? Sure, same old spot. I finally replied, trying to sound as casually annoying as usual. I put down my phone and bolted into the closet, putting on my very own miracle bikin fashion show. Even though she saw us as best brothers, I always dressed up carefully to see her, just not obviously, or she'd tease me and say, "What's gotten into you today?" The next day, I showed up at our usual milk tea shop half an hour early. I ordered her favorite taro boba milk tea and my iced Americano, then waited on pins and needles. "Brother Chun," a bright voice called from the door. I looked up and saw Sunayan walk in wearing a white dress, the sunlight wrapping her in a soft, glowing filter. Her long hair was loosely tied up, and she had that same carefree smile on her face. But I noticed sharply the faint, dark circles under her eyes, and her smile wasn't as bright and natural as usual. "Been waiting long?" She sat down across from me, took a big sip of her milk tea, and sighed. Brother Chun always knows what I want. Just got here. I acted casual. "What's the big news that's so important?" Sunayan twisted the straw between her fingers, her gaze darting around. She took a deep breath, like she was working up all her courage. "My family went bankrupt." "What?" My iced Americano nearly spilled all over the place. "When did this happen?" "Last month." She gave a bitter smile. "There were signs a while ago, but my dad tried to tough it out. He can't keep it up anymore." I was at a loss for words. Sunayan's family had been well off. Not as well off as mine. Our family's mask factory had boomed during the pandemic, our assets skyrocketing, but they'd been comfortably wealthy. The news came out of nowhere. "We'll have a little left after everything's settled. Enough for daily life." Her voice dropped. "But my plan to study abroad is probably off the table." Everything clicked all at once. Why she'd been acting off today. Sunayan had been working her tail off since junior year to study pastry in France. She'd signed up for French classes, looked into dozens of schools. Everything was ready. All she needed was the funding. And the funding had just vanished. Tuition plus living expenses, it's at least $500,000 a year. She bit down on the straw. "Dad says we just don't have that kind of money right now, so… Brother Chun, can I borrow some money from you?" She looked up at me, her eyes shiny and wet, like a puppy caught in the rain. My heart softened for no reason, then filled with quiet excitement. My family definitely had money, but Sunayan had never thought more of me for it. She was always teasing me for being a trust fund kid who never had to work for anything. "I know this is so much to ask," she added quickly. "I can write an IOU. With the highest interest rate. I'll pay you back every cent with interest once I start working." Watching her eager, nervous face, a bold, almost crazy idea popped into my head out of nowhere. 5 years. I'd been too cowardly to confess, scared we'd lose even our friendship. Now, was this my chance? Money's no big deal, I heard myself say, my tone teasing. But I don't control the family finances. Unless you have a baby with me? That way I can ask my parents for the money with a straight. Sunayan's hand froze mid-air. Droplets of condensation from the milk teacup dripped onto the back of her hand. She set the cup down slowly, her eyes wide as saucers, like she'd just heard the most ridiculous joke of the century.
You.
What did you just say? She enunciated each word, disbelief dripping from every syllable. I swallowed, my stomach fluttering nervously, but there was no taking the words back now. I said, have a baby with me. Then my parents will stop nagging me about blind dates all the time. And also, smack. Making sure she hadn't misheard, Sunyan slammed her palm down on the table, making the couple at the next table glance over. Lu Baikin, did you hit your head or lose your mind? She was seething, her face bright red. I think of you as a brother and you actually want me to have your baby. The next second, her pretty fist barrage rained down on my arm. She held back her strength perfectly. All insult, zero actual damage. She hit me and ranted the whole time. Pervert. Jerk. I can't believe I thought you were a good guy. Ow. Easy, I was kidding. I dodged and begged for mercy. But secretly I was kind of pleased. At least she hadn't stormed out and flipped the table. Kidding my ass. She pulled her hands back, crossed her arms, and glared at me. You think just because I'm desperate I'd agree to some humiliating deal like this? I rubbed my poor abused arm and tried to sound casual. How about 2 million? Sunayan's eyes went even wider. She leaned in and whispered, Lu Baikin, are you insane? 2 million just for 3 million. I looked her straight in the eye, my heart pounding like a drum. I knew I was playing with fire, but I couldn't help testing the waters. You. Sunayan's expression grew complicated as she twisted the hem of her dress. It's not about the money. 5 million. I took a deep breath and said the number. It was the absolute maximum I could scrape together by selling my game accounts, my sports car, everything. As if on cue, the background music in the shop switched to a soft romantic love song. Sunayan's eyelashes fluttered softly like butterfly wings. Time seemed to slow down. 5 million, she murmured, her gaze drifting out the window. Enough for me to finish school in France comfortably, and help my family out a little too. My heart raced with excitement. She was actually considering it.
Brother.
Chin. She turned back to me suddenly, her gaze sharp. You're being serious? You're not messing with me? My throat felt tight. Logically, I should laugh and say, of course it's a joke, then just lend her the money, no strings attached. But looking at her face so close to mine, I nodded before I could stop myself. Sunyan took a deep breath, then did something that left me stunned. She reached out and rested her hand gently on top of mine. Okay. I'll do it. Her voice was as light as a feather. But I have conditions. I could barely believe my ears. The warmth of her hand on mine sent my heart rate soaring to 180. What conditions? I tried to stay calm, scared I'd scare away this sudden turn of events. Her fingers tightened slightly. I could feel how nervous she was. You cover all the dating expenses. She kept her head down, her voice getting quieter and quieter. Movies, dinners, trips. And done. I cut her off eagerly. Everything. I've even picked out the engagement ring already. Sunyan looked up at me, her expression odd. You agreed way too fast. Because I'm not joking. I flipped my hand to hold hers, feeling the slight tremor in her fingertips. Ever since I helped you carry your luggage on orientation day freshman year, I've... Stop. She yanked her hand back, her face as red as a ripe tomato. So cheesy. Let's just talk about the contract first. She pulled a small notebook out of her bag and started scribbling down terms. 1. The money counts as a loan and must be paid back. 2. You cover all pregnancy-related costs. 3. Watching the side of her face as she wrote, I suddenly felt like this couldn't be real. 5 years of secret crush, and this was how it was finally going somewhere. In the weirdest way possible? 3. She bit the tip of her pen, like she was choosing her words carefully. After the baby's born, we go back to being best brothers. That hit me like a bucket of cold water. So after the baby, everything goes back to how it was? Fine, I agreed out loud. But already I was plotting how to upgrade our relationship during this time. Sunian seemed to relax a little and kept writing. 4. You can't interfere with my normal life during the pregnancy. 5. She glanced up at me. Keep it a secret from everyone, including your parents. That's gonna be tricky. I scratched my head. A random baby showing up? I'll have to explain. That's your problem, she said firmly. I don't want people calling me a gold digger who used a baby to climb the social ladder. I couldn't help laughing. Miss Sue, what you're agreeing to right now is basically using me, isn't it? Lou Bikin. She threw a tissue at me. It's a loan. A business arrangement. Got it. Got it, got it. I held up my hands. In surrender. Whatever you say. She huffed and kept writing, and I just watched her, admiring her secretly. Done. She tore the page out and slid it across the table. Sign it. I picked it up. The title was Special Loan and Co-Parenting Agreement, with 8 clauses listed. At the bottom, there was a blank line. Additional terms, underscore, 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 what's this? I pointed at the blank line. We can add more later. She blinked. What? Scared to sign? I signed my name with a flourish, then added at the end of the blank line. The lender shall have unlimited visitation and playtime rights with the child. Sunyan frowned slightly when she read that clause, but didn't object. So she tucked the agreement away, suddenly looking awkward. What now? First, I'll transfer a $1,000,000 deposit to you. I pulled out my phone. Wait. She grabbed my hand. Aren't you afraid I'll take the money and run? I laughed. You can run, but you can't hide. Besides, I drew out the words playfully, I have faith in my own abilities. Get lost. She pretended to hit me, but the corner of her mouth tugged upward. After the transfer went through, Sunyan stared at the bank notification on her phone for a long time, her eyes glistening. Thank you, she said quietly. I'll pay you back. I promise. No rush, I said softly. Just focus on your study abroad plans first. She nodded, then suddenly remembered something and asked hesitantly, should we get checked out at the hospital? I froze for a second, then caught on. Right, prenatal checkups. Tomorrow? She nodded, her voice even softer. And also, should we practice first? My brain short-circuited. Practice what? Sunayan's face burned bright red. You know, the process. We can't just wing it the first time, right? I felt all the blood rush to my head. You mean? I looked it up, she said quickly. Success rate is highest around ovulation, so we can get familiar with each other first. I swallowed hard. It suddenly felt like the milk tea shop's sea was broken. Then, tonight? Sunayan's face flushed instantly, bright red as a ripe apple. She ducked her head so far down she almost buried it in her milk tea, her voice barely a whisper. My heart was pounding. I felt like every vein in my body was on fire. 5 years. I'd barely even dared hold her hand properly a handful of times, and now we were going to practice? Then come back to my place? I tried to sound calm, but my voice came out a little rough. I live alone. It'll be private. Sunyan didn't look up. She gave the tiniest nod, the tips of her ears bright red. On the way back, the air between us was thick with tension. We sat side by side in the back of the taxi, with enough space between us for 2 more people. I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. She was staring out the window at the passing streets, her profile tight, her hands twisting the hem of her dress nervously. When we got to my place and I opened the door, the familiar quiet of the apartment wrapped around us. Want something to drink? I tried to ease the awkwardness, my voice sounding too loud in the silent room. No thanks. Sunyan slipped on the slippers quickly and stood in the middle of the living room, looking lost. I looked at her standing there, the white dress making her look so fragile in the light. and suddenly all my flustered thoughts melted into a soft, aching fondness. I stepped closer and took her hand gently. Her fingers were ice cold, trembling slightly. Nyanian, I said softly, using the pet name for the first time ever. If you're not ready, we can. No. She lifted her head sharply, her eyes fierce with determination. We signed the agreement, you transferred the money. I can't back out now. She took a deep breath, as if hyping herself up. Let's do this. Get it over with. Looking at her like she was marching to her execution, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This wasn't practice. This was going to the gallows. I pulled her down to sit on the sofa and didn't try anything else. I just held her hand, rubbing my thumb gently over the back of her hand. Don't be nervous, I looked her in the eye. We'll take it slow. Sunayan's gaze flickered. Her long lashes fell, and she said nothing. The room fell quiet again, only the sound of our uneven breathing filling the space. I leaned in slowly. She could feel me coming closer, and her whole body went rigid. Her eyes fluttered shut on instinct. I stopped just a few centimeters from her lips. I could feel her warm breath on my cheek. The faint scent of jasmine from her hair mixed with the sweet smell of milk tea, and it was almost enough to make me lose my mind. Nyanian, I whispered. Look at me. She opened her eyes slowly, bright and glistening, confused and a little flustered, right as my lips were about to meet hers. Garargle. A long, loud stomach growl rumbled clearly from Sunayan's stomach. Time seemed to stand still. Sunayan shoved me
Away.
hard, her face scarlet with embarrassment, and clutched her stomach. I skipped lunch. I froze for 2 seconds, then burst out laughing. All the tension and romance vanished in an instant. Stop laughing. Don't laugh. She grabbed a pillow and threw it at me, furious. I dodged, laughing harder. Okay, I'm done. Come on, let's get you something to eat first. Whatever you want. My treat. Sunyan glared at me, her cheeks puffed out, but the nervousness in her eyes had clearly faded a lot. We ended up going to our usual Cantonese restaurant. Sunyan channeled all her embarrassment into eating, attacking the hargao, roast goose and rice rolls like they'd personally offended her. Watching her dig in, my chest felt warm and soft. Maybe this ridiculous start wasn't such a bad detour on the way to something happy. At least she was here with me. On the way home, she fell asleep in the passenger seat. All the ups and downs of the day must have worn her out. At a red light, I turned to look at her. She looked so peaceful asleep, her lashes casting soft shadows on her cheeks. My phone buzzed. A message from my mom's son. Uncle Lee's daughter is coming back next week. Wanna have dinner together? I looked at Sunayan sleeping beside me, and for the first time I replied calmly, Mom, no thanks. There's someone I like. Morning sunlight slipped through the gap in the curtains, slanting across the bed and painting a warm stripe across Sunayan's face. Her lashes fluttered and she blinked awake groggily. The first thing she saw was my face, inches from hers, and the fact that she was clinging to me like an octopus. The air froze for 3 seconds. Ah! A scream loud enough to blow the roof off rang right in my ear. Sunyan jolted away like she'd been burned, huddling in the corner of the bed and wrapping herself in the covers until only her wide, panicked eyes peeked out. Lou Baiken. Last night. What happened last night? Her voice was rough with sleep and shaking badly. Her scream jolted me fully awake. Seeing her so terrified, a mischievous idea popped into my head. I sat up slowly, rubbing the arm she'd been sleeping on, and put on a lazy, suggestive look. You don't remember? Those words hit her like a ton of bricks. All the color drained from her face, then flooded back in a flush of embarrassment and shame. I. She stammered, trying desperately to remember, but her memory only went back to gorging herself at the Cantonese restaurant. After that, everything was blank. Did I black out? She flipped back the covers just enough to check her clothes. She was still in yesterday's dress, wrinkled but fully on. And her body didn't feel any different, but what if? Seeing she was actually about to cry, I decided to stop messing with her. Got you. I laughed. throwing back my own covers to show I was fully dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants. Some little pig fell asleep in the car last night. I practically carried you all the way up here. I dumped you on the bed and you just rolled over and kept sleeping. Couldn't wake you up no matter what. Sunian froze, blinking as she processed what I'd said. The embarrassment faded, replaced by an awkward sort of, was that a tiny hint of disappointment? You tricked me. She threw the pillow at me again, much softer this time. Who told you to ask so bluntly? I caught the pillow and hugged it, grinning at her. Sunayanyan, what kind of dirty thoughts are you having up there? Is our pure platonic friendship that easy to ruin? Get lost, we are not friends. She huffed and jumped out of bed barefoot and stormed toward the bathroom. I don't want to talk to you right now. The bathroom door slammed shut, and I heard the lock click. Listening to the sound of running water inside, I collapsed back on the bed laughing. Our practice plan had gotten derailed because someone got hungry and passed out, but seeing her so lively and bright right now was way better than the nervous, sad girl I'd seen at the milk tea shop yesterday. But after the laughter, the real problem was still there. When she came out of the bathroom, her face still damp, she'd calmed down, though the tips of her ears were still pink. She cleared her throat, looking away. Since nothing happened, then the practice thing.
No rush.
I cut her off. Let's go get the checkups first. And as for the rest, I drew out the words. Smiling as I watched her shoulders tense up, we can wait until you're not so nervous. Sunyan visibly relaxed, but she wouldn't admit it. Who's nervous? I was just hungry, sure. Miss Sue is fearless. I held up my hands in surrender. Come on, let's get you breakfast first, then head to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, Sunyan was noticeably quieter. She kept staring out the window, her fingers picking nervously at the seatbelt without her noticing.
Brother.
Chun, she said suddenly, her voice very soft, if the checkup shows there's something wrong with me and I'm not fit to get pregnant, the agreement is off. I'll find a way to pay you back as soon as I can. My chest tightened. I turned to look at her. Sunlight fell on the side of her face, catching the fine downy hairs there, and her expression held a rare kind of vulnerability. Don't be silly. I took one hand off the wheel and ruffled her hair. You'll be fine. And even if there was something wrong, you wouldn't have to pay me back. Think of it as you're investing in your future. She turned to look at me, her eyes bright, and a soft smile slowly tugged at the corner of her mouth. Thank you, Brother Chun. The checkup was more awkward than I'd expected. Especially during the gynecological exam, I stood waiting in the hallway, listening to the faint clink of instruments from inside, my stomach in knots. When Sunian came out, her face was a little pale, and she walked a little awkwardly. You okay? I hurried over to support her. She shook her head and said nothing. It was afternoon by the time we got all the results. The doctor looked at both of us, adjusted his glasses and said, all your numbers look good, you're very healthy. You can start taking folic acid now. When are you two planning to have the baby? Sunayan's face flushed bright red instantly. She kept her head down, staring at the toes of her shoes. I squeezed her hand and smiled at the doctor. We'll let nature take its course. The doctor said, writing something in the chart without looking up. Staying relaxed is important. Too much stress works against you. Keep track of your ovulation period. When we left the hospital, Sunyan let out a long breath, like she'd just survived a tough battle. What now? She asked with a sort of reckless courage. Do we just get to the main thing? I looked at the stack of test results in my hand, and the folic acid the doctor had prescribed, then looked at her determined march to the gallows expression, and couldn't help laughing. Sunayanian, having a baby isn't some task you check off a list. I tucked the folic acid into her bag. The doctor said we need to relax, so I took her hand and started walking toward the mall. Let's go unwind first. My idea of unwinding was taking her to the biggest arcade in the city. When we were kids, whenever I failed a test or was in a bad mood, I'd drag Sue. Neon here to blow off steam playing games. Sure enough, the second we walked in and heard the familiar background music and game sound effects, Sunayan's eyes lit up. Lou Baikin, I want to play that. She pointed at the new dance machine, eager to try. Bring it on. Who's scared? I raised an eyebrow. The result was predictable. With my terrible coordination, she destroyed me completely. Watching her wiggle her hips triumphantly in front of me, her smile so bright it was almost dazzling, I wiped sweat from my forehead and thought, worth every damn penny. Then we played racing games, shooting games, and won a whole bunch of weirdly cute stuffed animals. Sunayan hugged a giant pink rabbit plushie and smiled like a little kid. Okay, I'm beat, she finally surrendered, fine beads of sweat on her forehead. Let's go get ice cream. Sitting in the ice cream shop, she dug into a huge cup of chocolate almond ice cream, her eyes closed in bliss.
Brother.
Chun, she licked the spoon. I haven't had this much fun in forever. The sunset streamed through the window, gilding her in warm gold. The mood was so perfect in that moment that I almost fooled myself into thinking we were actually on a date. Nyanian, I looked at her, my voice softening without me noticing. Actually, Before I could finish, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted slightly. It was that senior who'd been into her. She hesitated for a second, then answered. Hello, senior. I'm fine. Thanks for asking. No, really, Watching how polite and distant she was on the phone with him, compared to how freely she'd laughed with me just minutes before. The little twinge of jealousy I'd felt instantly melted into smugness. When she hung up, she looked at me awkwardly. It's Senior Chun. He heard about my family and wanted to know if I needed help. Oh, I drew the word out, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Sounds like lots of people want to help you. Sunyan glared at me and raised her spoon like she was going to hit me. Lu Baikin, don't be snarky. I'm your, she trailed off, too embarrassed to say the word partner out loud. Your what? I leaned in closer, grinning teasingly. Her face flushed again, and she scooped a huge spoonful of ice cream and shoved it in my mouth. Can't you just shut up and eat? The cold sweetness melted on my tongue, sweet all the way down to my heart. The sweet cream of the ice cream still lingered on my tongue when we got back to my empty apartment. The sunset had already painted the living room in warm orange. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing off the outside world. The easy laughter from the arcade and the ice cream shop felt like it had been left outside too. And a delicate, tense silence quickly settled over the room. Sunian hugged the giant pink rabbit, standing awkwardly in the middle of the living room, her eyes darting everywhere but landing on me. She cleared her throat, a faint nervousness in her voice. So, now looking at the faint blush still on her cheeks, I knew I couldn't joke my way out of this one like before. I walked over to the TV stand, picked up the tablet, swiped a few times on the screen, then walked over to the sofa as calmly as I could and patted the spot next to me. Come sit, my voice was a little deeper than usual. Let's start with some theoretical learning first. Sunian froze for a second, then realized what I meant. The blush on her face burned even hotter, spreading all the way down her neck. She walked over slowly, hugging the stuffed rabbit tight to her chest like a shield, and sat down a little ways away from me. I pulled up an educational video I'd saved earlier, one with a very academic and proper-sounding title. At first Sunyan sat up straight, staring intently at the screen. But as the video went on and got into more practical details, I could feel her body go rigid. When the video started showing 3D diagrams, she couldn't take it anymore. She ducked her head, burying her burning face deep in the soft fur of the rabbit plushie, and mumbled, "Can we stop watching?" My own ears were warm too, but seeing how utterly mortified she was, I bit back a smile and turned off the video. Alright, theory part's over. I set the tablet aside. The living room fell quiet again, only the sound of our slightly ragged breathing filling the space. Sunian still had her face buried in the plushie, the tips of her ears bright red. I took a deep breath and reached out, gently wrapping my fingers around her wrist. Her body went visibly stiff, but she didn't pull away. I tugged her a little closer with one hand, and moved the annoying rabbit plushie out of the way with the other. The plushie rolled onto the carpet. Without her shield, she looked up at me, flustered. Those eyes that were always so sharp and bright were now shiny and wet, full of confused nervousness and a faint, hidden sort of anticipation. Nyanyan, I whispered, my thumb brushing softly over the inside of her delicate wrist, feeling her rapid pulse. You're not hungry this time, are you? Her lashes fluttered hard. Her face turned even redder, but she didn't look away. That one single word was like a key, unlocking the hungry beast of longing I'd kept caged inside me for so long. I didn't hesitate any longer. I leaned down and kissed her. At first it was just a soft, tentative touch. Her lips were unbelievably soft, still faintly sweet from the ice cream, with that light jasmine-like scent that was uniquely her. She trembled all over and closed her eyes on instinct. The hand resting on my arm tightened slightly, her knuckles going a little white. Feeling how new and nervous she was, I took my time, tracing the shape of her lips with my tongue, then gently parting them. The kiss deepened, slow and burning. I slipped one arm around her waist, pulling her closer, and ran the other through her loosely tied hair, cradling the back of her neck. At first her body was still stiff, but slowly, under my guidance, she relaxed and began to kiss me back awkwardly. Soft little sounds escaped between our lips, warm and intimate enough to make your heart race. Slowly, a soft pink flush spread across Sunyan's fair skin. Lu Baikin. She mumbled my name, her voice wobbly and unsure. I'm here. I pulled back just enough to press my forehead to hers, breathing heavily. Is this okay, Nyanyan? Her chest rose and fell quickly. A flicker of hesitation crossed her eyes, but in the end it was replaced by determined resolve. She closed her eyes and nodded again, so faintly, and wrapped her arms around my neck. That silent permission burned through every last bit of my self-control. I lifted her up into my arms and carried her to the bedroom. The second she sank into the soft mattress, Sunyan tensed up again. I leaned down and kissed her again. Outside the window, the sky faded from warm orange to deep blue, then finally into inky black. The room was dark, only the distant neon glow of the city seeping through the curtains, casting faint, intimate streaks of light. Afterward I stared at her shadowed outline in the dark, my voice rough. Did it hurt? She shook her head slightly, burying her face deeper in the crook of my neck. It was okay. That tiny, trusting gesture made my chest feel so soft it ached. I tightened my arms around her, holding her close, feeling her press gently against me, and a sense of fulfillment I'd never known before washed over me. Brother Chun, she said quietly, breaking the silence. Did we finish the mission? Her words pricked at me like a tiny thorn. I tilted my head down, looking at her in the faint light seeping through the window. To you, this is just a mission? She fell silent. Her breath fanned against my skin, tickling a little. After a long moment she said, I don't know. That's what the agreement says. To hell with the agreement, I muttered under my breath, tilting her chin up to make her look at me. Sunyan, look at me. Just now. Did you feel nothing at all for me? In the dark, her eyes were shiny and wet, like obsidian veiled in mist. She averted her gaze, her lashes fluttering. It feels strange how? I pressed, not letting her dodge the question. She seemed too embarrassed to say it, and finally her voice was barely a whisper. I don't hate it. My heart sank a little.
Just
don't hate it even? She seemed to work up all her courage before adding, kind of nice. The last two words were almost mumbled, but I heard them clear. A warm rush of feeling washed away my faint disappointment. I chuckled softly and kissed her sweat, dampened forehead again. Just kind of, Lu Baikin. She thumped my chest in embarrassment, her blow light and soft. I laughed and laced my fingers through hers, pressing her hand to my chest so she could feel how fast my heart was still beating. Feel that? Who do you think is making it beat this fast? Her palm rested against my warm skin, trembling slightly, but she didn't pull it away. Neither of us spoke again. We just lay there, curled up together. Just when I thought she was drifting off, she asked quietly, Do you think once is enough to get pregnant? I blinked, surprised she was still thinking about that. Not necessarily, I answered honestly, twisting a strand of her hair around my finger absent-mindedly. We might have to try dozens more times. She made a soft little sound and snuggled closer into my arms. After that first time we put theory into practice, things between Sunyan and me entered a delicate new phase. We started fulfilling the agreement whenever it felt right, without ever talking about it out loud. Sometimes it was on a weekend afternoon when sunlight filtered soft through the sheer curtains. Sometimes it was late at night, after a movie when the mood was just right. That special loan and co-parenting agreement sat like an unspoken secret, tucked carefully away at the back of a drawer. Sunayan seemed to relax little by little. She no longer acted like she was marching to her execution. But a new problem popped up. She was still so shy. Right after, she'd curl up tight under the covers with her back to me, or dart into the bathroom like something was chasing her. Until one time she stayed in the bathroom for almost half an hour. The water had been off for ages, but she still hadn't come out. I was about to wonder what was taking so long when her embarrassed, hesitant voice came from inside. Brother Chun. I forgot my towel. I glanced down at the neatly folded clean towel on the chair and a smile tugged at my lips. I picked it up, walked to the bathroom door and knocked. The door opened a crack, and warm steam drifted out, scented with body wash. A damp, water-beaded arm reached out, fumbling blindly. Instead of handing her the towel, I slipped inside through the gap. Ah! Sunyan gasped. Her cheeks were flushed pink from the steam, and her eyes were wide and flustered. The bathroom light was warm, and mist curled softly around her, gilding her in gold. The warm steam wrapped around me at once, sweet with the scent of jasmine and body wash that was uniquely her. Ah, what are you doing in here? Helping you, I said unapologetically. I spread the big towel around her, wrapping her up from head to toe, and began gently drying her damp hair and her back. She stood rigid, letting me do it, the tips of her ears bright red. But as I leaned in to dry her hair, my elbow accidentally knocked the shower handle. Whoosh, cold water came pouring down, drenching both of us. Eep! Sunayan shivered from the cold and burrowed straight into my arms. I fumbled to turn the water off, but we were both already half soaked. Seeing how messy we both looked, I laughed and held her tighter, murmuring in her ear, "Guess we'll have to shower again." This time she didn't argue. She just pressed her burning cheek to my equally damp chest and made the softest little mim sound. After that accidental bathroom incident, I started to notice a change in Sunayan. She no longer bolted right after, or wrapped herself up in the covers like a cocoon. Instead, sometimes she'd lie lazily in my arms, tracing idle circles on my chest with her fingertips. What surprised me even more was that she seemed more and more present. That initial awkward passiveness faded. She started kissing me back, clumsy but bold, and when things got heated, she'd murmur my name in that soft, sweet voice of hers, "Baby." The change was subtle but impossible to miss. It was like a carefully tended seed finally pushing through the soil, unfurling its leaves and showing the life inside. She was visibly softer with me too. Before she'd been carefree, barely noticing little things like that. Now when I stayed up late working, she'd quietly bring me a warm glass of milk. She'd remember a dessert shop I'd mentioned offhand and bring some over next time she came. Even when I came home drunk from a work dinner, she'd frown and scold me while dabbing my face with a warm towel. That softness wasn't forced or performative. It was like spring rain, seeping quietly into every little corner of how we were together. Once she was lying next to me, blinking up at me and asked, "Brother Chun, do you want a boy or a girl?" I paused, then a warm rush of feeling filled my chest. I pinched her nose gently. "As long as it's yours, I'll love it either way." She wrinkled her nose and swatted my hand away. "Humph, smooth talker, but..." The corner of her mouth tugged upward anyway, and there was a bright, genuine sparkle in her eyes. Days slipped by in that strange, increasingly intimate limbo, technically a business arrangement, but feeling more and more like something real. Until that weekend morning. Sunyan frowned at the fried eggs on the table, then darted into the bathroom, retching. My heart leapt into my throat. A single thought flashed through my mind like lightning. My hands were shaking as I ran to the pharmacy for a pregnancy test. Then I waited outside the bathroom door, every second feeling like an eternity. The door opened. Sunyan stood there holding the test, her expression impossible to read, dazed, flustered, and a faint, strange softness. 2 lines, she said quietly, holding the test out to me. I stared at those 2 bright red lines, and my mind went completely blank for a second. Then a huge, overwhelming rush of joy crashed over me like a tidal wave. I lifted her up and spun her around in circles, whooping, "I'm gonna be a dad, Nayani, and you're amazing." Sunyan yelped in surprise, hitting my shoulder and telling me to put her down. But she was smiling too, even if the smile was still a little dazed. "Put me down. I'm getting dizzy." I sat her down gently, my arms still around her waist, staring intently at her still flat stomach, where our baby was growing. "From now on, you don't have to worry about a thing. I've got everything handled," I said solemnly. I sprang into action right away. First I called home, and told my mom in a tone that brooked no argument. "Mom, I'm getting married. Sunyan is pregnant. Get everything ready." There were 3 seconds of silence on the other end, then an explosion of shocked exclamations and questions. Then we deferred Sunayan's study abroad application for a year. Then I started looking for a confinement nanny, booking the best private hospital for prenatal checkups. I was more motivated than I'd ever been in my life. I wanted to bring her everything good in the world. Sunyan watched me running around, half exasperated but mostly touched that I cared so much. She took my hand and said, "Brother Chun, you don't have to go this far." "I'm fine." "No way," I said firmly. "You're priority number 1 now." After the initial shock, my parents quickly came around. Especially once they met Sue Nian, they adored her, and immediately started planning the proposal visit and the wedding. That little unexpected life pushed our relationship straight onto the path I'd dreamed of for so long. We moved into the new house with a garden that I'd had ready for ages, and started building a real life together. During her pregnancy, Sunayan's moods were all over the place. One minute she was teary and sentimental, the next she was beating me up over the smallest thing. But I loved every second of it. Every day I found new ways to cheer her up and satisfy her weird random cravings. Watching her belly grow, feeling that little life get bigger every day, filled my chest with a deep, warm happiness. 9 months later, in the delivery room, with a loud, clear cry, our daughter entered the world. When the nurse placed that tiny, wrinkly baby looking like a little pink monkey in my arms, my hands were shaking. Tears spilled down my face before I even realized it. I carried our daughter over to Sunayan, exhausted but her eyes bright, and kissed her dampened forehead. "You did amazing, baby," I said, laying our daughter gently next to her. "Look, our daughter, as beautiful as you." Sunayan looked down at the tiny baby beside her, and a tired but utterly happy smile spread across her face. She reached out a finger and brushed it lightly against her daughter's cheek, then looked up at me. Her eyes were full of softness and something entirely new. "Brother Chun, when the babies whined, I want to take her with me to France," she said softly, but her tone left no room for doubt. "All 3 of us." I froze for a second, then laughed softly. Of course. This was Sunyan. She'd never truly let go of her dream. And now she was our daughter's mother, my wife, and above all, still herself. I squeezed her hand tight, and over our daughter's faint little cries, gave her the answer I'd already known in my heart. "Okay. I'll go with you both. I'll take a laid-back job at a friend's company over there. I'll be your driver, your nanny, and your personal ATM." Sunyan smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "But that 5 million." I leaned down and kissed her, stopping the rest of her words. "It was never just a loan," I whispered against her lips, my voice warm with amusement and unshakable certainty. "Ever since the day you said yes, you've been mine, all mine. No takebacks, no refunds. And now, it's a lifetime deal." Sunlight streamed through the windows of the delivery room, falling over the 3 of us, warm and bright. What had begun as a ridiculous loan agreement had long been softened and transformed by time and love, growing into an unbreakable bond of family, and a promise forever. This story tells of a man who had a secret crush on a girl for years. When her family suffered misfortune and her dream of studying abroad was threatened, they reached an agreement based on a loan and childbearing. What started out as a transactional relationship gradually bloomed into genuine affection as they spent time together. It teaches us that love cannot be forced by deals, Yet people's hearts can be touched by companionship and tenderness. A utilitarian contract is only a starting point. Sincere care, respect, and devotion are what truly bring two people close. Do not treat love as mere barter. Only by letting go of calculation and being honest with your heart can you gain mutual devoted romance.